Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think there may be a few more people joining us, but want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I appreciate you all joining us to talk about our strategic plan. And we're excited to share with you the results of the last 6 months or so of work that's been done. And some of you may have seen parts of this previously, but it's been a working document. So we'll look forward to walking through it with you. If we can ask everybody to, I think you're already automatically muted, but ask you to stay on mute until we get to our open discussion towards the end of our call. We appreciate that. And Amanda, if I could ask you, just got a text from Tom Daly asking for the link. If you could email it to Tom Daly, that would be great.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and get started. I'll share with you our agenda. We'll start, of course, with an opening prayer, and then Denise Fisher, our council president, has a couple of remarks, and then we'll kick off and walk through the strategic plan draft, and then we have some polling questions as we go through it, and then at the end we'll open it up for feedback and discussion, and then close with a prayer. So let's start with the prayer. So everybody hopefully has heard about Vision SVDP, and even though we haven't really kicked off that process in our council yet, we'll do that in September. The prayer that was developed for Vision SVDP is obviously very forward-looking, talking about us adapting to a changing world, which of course is what we're trying to do in our own strategic plan. So I thought we'd start with the Vision SVD prayer that was composed by Tim Williams. So let's pray in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, open our eyes, our hearts, and our imaginations to your inspiration as we seek to discern the Father's holy will for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul and how it will adapt to a changing world. Come, Holy Spirit, transform our doubts, ignite our zeal, help us discern new and innovative ways to bring more people into the joy of service in the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Come, Holy Spirit, grant us the simplicity to share honestly with each other, the humility to serve a mission greater than ourselves, and the gentleness to listen to each other without judgment. Amen. Thanks, Holy Spirit. Amen. So I'd like to introduce Denise Fisher. Hopefully, I think I saw you on, Denise.
I am here. Good evening, everybody. As many of you are, I'm sure, are aware, one of the primary responsibilities of the board of directors is strategic planning. This year, we appointed Louise Scott to head the board strategic planning committee, and she and the members of her committee put in many hours into a deep dive to understand the current state of where we're at in terms of the services and that we offer and how well we're meeting our mission. And they worked with our talented staff to see what's possible in the future. Oops, put some notes together. The objective of this plan, from the board's perspective, we want to be sure that it reflects the values of St. Vincent de Paul International, that it is consistent with the mission of St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia, that it's responsive to the needs of our Georgia communities, and that it's supported by the membership, which is all of you. So, and one of the other things we want to be careful of is that we are protecting our very valuable 120 plus year reputation, so that whatever new things we may venture out into, we want to make sure that we can do them well and do them and live up to our Vincentian history. And then finally, we want to put our money where our mouth is. The reason we do this at this time of year is so that we have all this information before starting the budgeting process. And so the next thing that will happen is putting the funding plan in place to make these things, to make sure that there's adequate resources for their success. So I want to begin by thanking Mike and Lisa Regan, Louise Scott, of course, and the Strategic Planning Committee, and all of you have participated in the surveys to give us your feedback and your presence here today to get this going. So with that, I'll let you kick off the presentation. Thank you for your participation.
Great, thank you. Just go back to this title slide, this title slide. And everybody hopefully is very intimately familiar with our Love Your Neighbor, Live Vincentian campaign, which I think is going quite well and has gotten a lot of positive feedback, not just here locally, but at our national meeting in Phoenix. I got a lot of comments from colleagues around the country that have seen it and have been impressed with the quality of the work that Lisa and Brian and Gina and the team have done. So, but we love that theme of the campaign, Love Your Neighbor, Live Vincentian, and we've really building off that theme. And the theme of our strategic plan is building neighborhoods of support and friendship, sort of leaning into the Love Your Neighbor theme. I want to highlight that this is, as it says in the upper right-hand corner, this is a draft plan. So this purpose of today's town hall is to get your feedback, and it's one of the steps in this planning process that we began really last year as a staff, and then earlier this year with Louisa's committee and with the board, doing a SWOT exercise, our Vincentian Town Hall that hopefully many of you participated in, which we got great input. And we've presented this plan to our board of directors, this draft to our board of directors last 2 weeks ago, and have incorporated their feedback into what you see today. I do want to highlight, Denise mentioned the surveys. I want to have a huge thank you to everybody who participated. You know, we tried to encourage greater participation in the surveys, and we had 620 responses from 69 conferences out of our 73. So by comparison, the last time we went through this process, we had 196. So we had 3 times as many Vincentians respond, which is great. And we got a lot of meaningful input into that. So we appreciate that. We also did a survey of our neighbors in need, and we got 736 responses to that. We will be summarizing those surveys and publishing something probably through the society page next month to share with all of you the results of those surveys. So anyway, this is our sort of second from last step. We've presented this, as I said, to the board. We've presented it to our staff at an employee meeting today. We've gotten feedback along the way from a number of constituents. We want feedback from you all, both today during this meeting and afterward. Feel free to send feedback. We're going to be finalizing this strategy plan and presenting it for final approval to the board at our meeting on September 23rd. So I shared at our town hall last time sort of 8 or 9 sort of core beliefs that will guide our planning process, and I just wanted to refresh that to sort of ground ourselves into what we set out for at the beginning. First and foremost is that we acknowledge that all of our works at the conference and council level need to incorporate the essential elements of spirituality, friendship, and service, as specified, of course, in the rule. Secondly, we and we've talked a lot about the fact that the rule stipulates that the primary purpose of a council, and we are the Archdiocesan Council of Georgia, is to support the conferences. So all of our activities and what we do here in terms of program development needs to be responsive to the needs of conferences. Third is that we know, based on call volumes to our helpline and other data, that we only serve with financial assistance probably 50 to 60% of the people that come to us. We provide food and other services to anybody, but in terms of financial assistance, we can't serve everybody who comes to us. And we believe that if if we had the capacity financially and in terms of volunteers, we could double the number of people we impact. And of course, the goal isn't to hit some number of people that we assist. The goal is how we assist those people. But it's an indication of the vast need in our communities. So to be able to serve more people, we need more money, and we do believe that our potential to generate funds is greater than our historical experience. We've really invested a lot in our development team and tools, and we think we can greatly enhance our fundraising potential. And then in addition to money, we need more people. So we need to prioritize efforts to recruit more Vincentians, to inspire more people to join our mission, our ministry, and to recruit younger and more diverse members. We see that in the poll. I think 85% of our members are over 61. So nothing we don't know. Next, we need to develop a greater presence in South Georgia and the Diocese of Savannah. We are the Archdiocesan Council of Georgia, so we represent both the Diocese of Atlanta, Archdiocese of Atlanta, and the Diocese of Savannah. And we need to provide greater service to both the residents and constituents in the Diocese of Savannah, but also the Catholics who want to have an opportunity to put their faith into service. And then in terms of programs, eviction prevention is the bulk of what we do. It's the most important thing we do. It's the bulk of what is done at the conferences through our direct financial aid, keeping people in their homes, avoiding homelessness by avoiding evictions. And that should continue to be the primary focus of our direct aid efforts. But we should also be endeavoring to help our neighbors avoid the risk of eviction in the future by helping to increase the incomes and stability of those that we serve, and we should prioritize those, and you'll see some of that in our plan. And lastly, we're part of an ecosystem, a charitable ecosystem. There's lots of wonderful organizations that we do partner with, and need to continue to foster and strengthen those partnerships, but also reach out to other organizations that we can partner with to better serve the neighbors that we serve. So that sort of set the stage back at the beginning of this process, and I think I think we've done a fairly good job of crafting a plan that's faithful to these sort of core principles, which hopefully you'll see as we walk through. I'm going to ask Lisa now to talk about sort of the executive summary before I get into all the nitty-gritty details.
Thank you, Mike. We just have a few slides of executive summary here, and also thank you, Denise, for that setting the stage here, because the important thing to remember is we're not starting from the beginning. We're starting from a long history of success in St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia, and a trusted brand, so to speak. So we know that nearly 200,000 people saw us last year. Annually, they place their trust in St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia, to see them through a difficult time and to help clear a path to self-sufficiency. Grounded in values that respect the dignity, rights, and agency of all people, the long-respected brand of St. Vincent de Paul connotes comfort for people in distress. That's what we know. So we start with an organization that connotes trust, that we have a long history with, but we also know that we have challenges ahead. Our challenge for this 5-year strategic plan is to build on the trusted name of St. Vincent de Paul while propelling the mission into a new age and level of service, addressing the increasingly complex needs of our neighbors. We've talked a lot. I talk to you guys on a regular basis, and we know how much things have changed for caseworkers and for conferences just in the past few years. We know that you're dealing with complex cases. And we also know that, we can't solve the world's problems, but we do want to address the change in the world today while maintaining what our St. Vincent de Paul name stands for. And go ahead to the next slide, Mike. So in the end, the plans will build on our core mission of providing help and hope to neighbors in need with our secret sauce: personal encounters, kindness, compassion, respect. And that's where we come back to our theme of focusing on building neighborhoods of support and friendship. And that's more than just a marketing line, and we'll dig into that in just a couple of minutes, but we'll just carry on here with some of our some of the internal and external issues that we're facing, but also tangible aid, personal care, and spiritual uplift, and innovative solutions that address complex needs will ultimately help people transform their lives and control their own destiny. So we are looking to build programs that will not just provide short-term relief, but will help people transform their lives. That's systemic change. And that's not an easy thing to do, but we need to think big. And that's really what this plan does. Looking at the external issues we're facing, you guys all know this, housing accessibility and affordability of basic needs really is a crisis for Georgia's working poor. We know that we're working with a lot of people who are working full-time and still can't pay their rent payments. Evictions have been on the rise following a COVID-induced moratorium. You've probably worked with folks, I know I have, that may have been in eviction during COVID, but were not actually being evicted because of the moratorium. That contributed to a false sense of security for a lot of folks. And now those folks are in huge amounts of debt. Food insecurity, particularly in rural areas, threatens the future of our children and families. There's gaps in medical coverage. We know that Georgia is at the center of a lot of that. And we know that the influx of immigrants also has a lot of impact on the demand. There are people that need help just as much as any other neighbor that we're seeing. But there's also challenges in what we can provide for immigrants, especially those that don't have legal status. From an internal perspective, you all shoulder huge responsibilities. I'm actually in awe of what conferences do. It's out of scope for a typical volunteer role. We know that burnout is a reality. And you had said in our town hall back in April that sometimes it's frustrating that you can only offer a fraction of direct aids that's needed for a growing number of neighbors with insurmountable past due rental debt, for instance. So we're not trying to solve the world's problems, but we do need to put that in perspective and understand what it is that we can provide, how we can move the needle a little bit and maintain and understand the Vincentian difference. Thirdly, our Vincentian community is aging. So I've heard it all from you. We all know it. We need younger folks building a pipeline, even if they're involved just in a peripheral way. The recruiting campaign is imperative. We also know that technology is underutilized right now. You have said it, that we know that the resources are there. We just don't know exactly how to access them when the rubber meets the road. We've heard you talk about these things, council office, but we don't always know where and how to access things. So technology is going to be a big part of this. How do we utilize technology to facilitate these partnerships and efficient casework? And then lastly, the elephant in the room that we all know is expanding our mission is going to require an exponential increase in funding. But as Mike said, we know there's opportunity. So last piece here, what is a neighborhood of support and friendship? It's what we all do. A conference is a neighborhood of support and friendship, right? You all know what your neighborhoods. You're used to seeing the people in the same apartment complexes in your community. What you're doing is you're supporting your community, your neighborhood, your parish within your conference and the neighbors that you serve. We want to build on that thought. We are a statewide council. We are supporting conferences statewide, and we do hope to truly be statewide with more conferences in South Georgia. But we need to find ways to maintain that neighborhood feel. Cyclically to the right, as a mission-driven community. So that speaks to our staff here at the council level, all of us that are part of our district, conference, council community. We are driven and bonded by what we are as a St. Vincent de Paul mission. That's a neighborhood of support and friendship. We need to be that for each other. Through programs for neighbors. I always use Motel to Home as a great example of a program that is a neighborhood of support and friendship, if you will. Those folks help each other. Motel to Home is a great example of a program that is built on a cohort of people that are bonded by the circumstance they have risen from, and also through the holistic care that they're receiving through the program, through financial empowerment, through trauma-informed care, through connection with each other. So that's a model that we want to use when we expand programs. It works, and we know that a long-term, more holistic approach to a program where people can connect with each other is a recipe for success. So lastly, all that speaks to the greater good. So how can we, within conferences, within our own mission-driven community, through programs that speak to that supportive concept, how can we work to the greater good of our entire community? So with that, we have built pillars, if you will, for this strategic plan that speak to supporting conferences, supporting Vincentians, supporting neighbors, and supporting communities. Our internal pillars are conferences and Vincentians. External pillars are supporting neighbors and communities. And what we've done with each of these pillars is created a strategy statement, if you will, that we have developed objectives underneath each of these statements. So we're trying to create something strategically that speaks to that neighborhood of support and friendship. And from there, we get more granular. And Mike's going to take you through the meat of the plan. Supporting conferences, our strategic statement here, to grow, revitalize, and diversify conferences with strong leaders and systems to perpetuate learning and growth. Sounds lofty, but it's really what we're already doing, what we've already launched with our recruiting campaign. Supporting Vincentians. Again, just speaking to what you have asked for. We need to fortify Vincentian volunteers with both spiritual and practical tools to build confidence, ground our work in our core mission, and address complex needs. And those things are all important together. And the reason that they're stated that way is because it's not just, one or the other. The world is a complex case. The world is a complex place, and cases are becoming more complex, but we also don't expect you to be able to solve the world's problems. So we need to make sure that we ground ourselves in our mission, in our spiritual focus, with our essential elements. And then our external constituencies, supporting neighbors. The strategic statement for that pillar is to foster transformational change through personal encounters and aid that lays the groundwork for self-sufficiency. Transformational change seems like a really big, sometimes insurmountable goal, but that's the direction that we need to head in. It's not impossible. And we can do small things and make great change. Lastly, supporting communities, filling gaps in our communities with presence and programs for the underserved. And by presence, we're actually talking about geographical presence. Where in our communities is there a geographical gap? Which populations are being underserved? What programs are not accessible for our communities? We have a lot of great nonprofits and a lot of great resource partners that are doing wonderful things in the state of Georgia. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. What we need to do is what we do well through personal encounters with our mission charism and fill gaps. So we need to be intentional and we need to be strategic. And with that, these 4 statements, then Mike's going to take us through what these look like and how they all relate to each other.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yep.
I saw your office light go off.
Yeah, no, it always happens here. Gotta move.
We're motion activated, so if you sit still for a long time, the lights go off. Thank you, Lisa. That's a great sort of high level summary, and we'll get into the details. So this diagram really shows the last 2 pages that Lisa shared, and just sort of one visual, and the visual to me is important. I think in terms of visuals and diagrams, and so here we can see these 4 pillars that we've talked about: supporting conferences, supporting Vincentians, supporting neighbors, and supporting communities, and how they interact. And it all starts with supporting conferences, which again is the primary purpose for for the council existing, and who can then help support our Vincentian community, our Vincentian volunteers, and better support the neighbors we serve, building stronger communities. So it's a holistic view of hopefully a virtuous cycle that we're all a big part of. So just in terms of terminology, these are our strategic pillars and our sort of strategic pillar statements that Lisa crafted. Underneath these, we have a set of strategic objectives, and below those, some strategic initiatives. And we'll share those two levels now, and then the step below that is the action plan, and the tactics and SMART goals, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're once this is finalized and we have a framework that we as an organization agree with and agree to, then we'll build that action plan. We'll build the budget to support it, and that will come over the next month or so. So again, these are the four pillars, and with each of these pillars, we have 3 or 4 strategic objectives. So in conferences, it's strengthen conference operations and support systems, focus resources on membership recruitment, encourage collaboration to share resources and best practices, and supplement conference funding efforts to provide more money to conferences. Supporting Vincentians involves providing greater opportunities for training and skills development, enhancing resources and support for caseworkers and neighbor advocates, recentering our work on our Vincentian charism and essential elements, and cultivating a Vincentian staff and a Vincentian culture within our employed staff. Supporting neighbors, emphasizing personal encounters so that we can achieve holistic change and systemic change for our neighbors in need. And to do that, we need to expand some of those resources. Third, expand targeted housing programs and develop services for unsheltered. And we'll talk more about each of these. And lastly, advocate for our neighbors, be the voice for the poor. And lastly, the sort of physical communities, invest in our physical neighborhoods, expand where we are, expand the number of communities that we operate in, and address underserved communities. So we'll cover each of these in turn and talk about these strategic objectives and then the initiatives that are below those. So the first, as we've already talked about, is supporting conferences, and the strategy is to grow, revitalize, and diversify conferences with strong leaders and systems to perpetuate learning and growth, and several objectives underneath that: strengthen conference operations and support systems. To do that, we want to better utilize our district council structure. Today, our district councils, as you know, serve a very important purpose, but it's primarily a communications means where conferences communicate up to the council through their district presidents and vice versa, and communicate issues through their district treasurers and that sort of thing. But we want to strengthen that district council structure by establishing district support roles, whether they're staff or volunteers, who can provide expertise to a district and be very familiar with the issues and resources associated with the district, and subject matter expertise within the district. So we want to expand the role and the usefulness, if you will, not that our districts are not useful, but the more practical usefulness of our district councils. Secondly, we want to support current leaders and encourage future leaders with expanded training and support systems, including mentoring program. So we really want to support conference presidents, treasurers, spiritual advisors, secretaries, and encourage the next generation. As all of us know, finding people to take these leadership roles is a challenge in many cases. We want to help with that by encouraging that earlier on in the process, getting potential future leaders engaged, developing a leadership academy, and then for incoming leaders, develop a mentor so they can pair us with somebody who's experienced from somewhere else in the country, and somebody we can rely on and get support from. Thirdly, we need to continuously improve our technology infrastructure and processes to provide efficiency and make it easier on volunteers to do the work that they do, recognizing that they're volunteers. So this is a fairly holistic statement because we're talking about all sorts of technology and processes. Obviously, we're making continuous improvements in CMS, and we're actually evaluating the future beyond CMS and other systems that we might migrate to that would be more effective and efficient. But also things like adding the request for assistance online intake form, streamlining the helpline, the mapping tool that I think Gene Rarick is on, that Gene Rarick helped us develop to make it easier to identify which conference or which conference is associated with a particular address, improving the phone system, streamlining how conferences order food, which we've done recently with an online ordering system. So those sort of continuous improvement processes to make life easier on conferences and conference leaders. The second objective is to focus resources on membership recruitment. We want to leverage the investment that we've made in the Live Vincentian campaign, and we want to budget for and dedicate resources to doing that on an annual basis, which involves providing more physical resources, expanding the library of materials, and really expanding the videos and the other things that we can put together to focus on cultural relevance to different populations to encourage diversity. How can we better communicate with young people who may want to put their faith in action and may not be very focused on organized religion, but want to serve? How can we be more relevant to young families who may not have time to do a lot of home visit casework, but can volunteer in other ways? How can we encourage diverse communities in terms of racial, ethnic diversity? So that'll be a focus of investment and dollars that we'll budget year to year to ensure that we're doing that on an annual basis. And secondly, it's not enough to inspire people to join us. We need to provide them with the tools to make them successful as Vincentians and to get them engaged quickly and meaningfully. So we want to provide onboarding processes and tools customizable by whatever role they want to play in a conference, potentially customizable by conference, so that it's usable for conferences that have maybe diverse roles or diverse memberships. The third objective is to encourage collaboration to share resources and best practices. This is, quite frankly, something that is a carryover from the last plan. Several of these things are carryovers from the last plan that never got fully accomplished, and this is one of those. So we want to create a robust and user-friendly online forum to connect Vincentians with subject matter experts across conferences. We've got such incredible knowledge within the society in various areas on various things. We've got experts on veteran services, experts on homelessness, experts on government aid programs, workforce programs. So we want to have an online forum where, if you have a problem with your iPhone, you go on the Apple forums and you get tips from other Apple users. We want to be able to have the same thing where, as a Vincentian, I could say, I'm dealing with a neighbor in this situation who's dealt with the same thing, who can help me direct to resources that would help. Secondly, we want to utilize our publications. So the society page, the formation and news, town halls, webinars, with greater purpose focused on sharing information, sharing practical resources. We don't, and I don't know how many people we have on this town hall, but we don't get a lot of people on town halls and webinars, which probably means that it's not meaningful content to them. So we need to be more purposeful and strategic about how we're using these tools and make sure that they're providing good information. I think Brian, I know, and Gina have been doing a good job in improving content in the society page, and we just need to continue to do that more strategically and more purposefully. And lastly, the fourth objective is to supplement conference funding efforts. And I'm sure no one on the call will disagree with with that. We want to get more money to conferences. So, and there are several ways to do that. We are committed to expanding our network of thrift stores. We're targeting to open 5 new stores at least over the next 5 years. We'd love to have a thrift store in every district. Today, we've got 73 conferences. Only 16 of those conferences get funding from thrift store revenues. We'd love to expand that so more conferences are getting meaningful funding from thrift stores. So we've already begun looking at other potential locations for new stores. And then we certainly want to continue to improve and expand the revenues in the existing stores. And we've done a lot of work over the last year of visiting very successful thrift store models throughout St. Vincent de Paul across the country, and learning ideas and tips and different business models that we think will help improve our thrift store net revenues here in Georgia. Secondly, and we've already started to do this to some extent, but we want to be more intentional about it. Utilize some new philanthropy programs that we've been rolling out. The Guardian Society, which is our monthly giving society, has already been launched, and we've agreed to allocate a certain portion of those monthly giving proceeds back to the conference twinning fund. The 1903 Society, which is our legacy society, is going to be relaunched here in during the year-end campaign. So as we can generate funds from legacy gifts, from estate gifts, we want to allocate some of that funding to go back to conferences. Many of you have heard me say publicly that I'd love to eliminate solidarity or generate enough money to flow back to conferences to offset solidarity. And that still is our long-term goal. And I'm confident that by the end of this plan, we'll be able to get there. And we're also expanding grant funding throughout the conferences. Our development team, Renee, Basil, and B, have been attending district meetings, attending some conference meetings, and been more active in engaging conferences and developing local grant opportunities. So we're very engaged with the Metro Atlanta community, but we want to engage with the EMCs and the community foundations and the United Ways around the rest of the state to get other avenues for funding. And lastly, and something that's already begun and has been a focus of B and Renee, is to provide kind of a toolkit and resources and training for you as conference leaders, conference presidents, to improve your fundraising efforts or expand your fundraising efforts and focus on donor relations. I will admit that as a conference president for 6 years, I spent virtually no time on donor relations and fundraising. It wasn't something I knew anything about. And we want to provide the tools so that you know how to engage your donors to increase your local collections to support your conferences. So that is our first pillar. We're a quarter of the way through, 1 out of 4. And we want to pause there, and I think Amanda will generate this poll, so it'll pop up on your screen. So we're asking you to give us your view as to whether the strategies in this pillar will move St. Vincent de Paul forward over the next 5 years, and tell us whether you strongly disagree, strongly disagree, etc. And we'll give you a couple of minutes. Amanda, I'll rely on you to let me know when we're complete.
We're done. Everybody should be able to see the results now.
Okay. So we have 19 and 21 that agree or strongly agree, and a couple that strongly disagree. And this is a great opportunity to remind you, please use the chat. For those of you that strongly disagree, put your comments in the chat. Let us know your thoughts and why you responded that way, what you disagree with in particular, or what you would like to see different. And then, of course, at the end of this, we'll have an open discussion, and you can actually share your comments live. Okay, thank you. Let's go on to our second pillar, supporting Vincentians. So the strategy is to fortify volunteers, because we're all volunteers as Vincentians, as conference members and thrift store volunteers, with spiritual and practical tools to build confidence, ground our work in the core mission, and address complex needs. And again, we've got 4 strategic objectives. We'll cover each of those in turn. So the first is to provide greater opportunities for training and skills development. And this is not training for training's sake, but this is training focused on kind of what we're hearing in the surveys and in the feedback. So many of you may remember, if you've been a Vincentian for longer than 4 or 5 years, we used to have, Amanda used to run Vincentian University, and we used to have a curriculum of several different courses that could be offered. We want to reestablish that, and we want to actually add more programming, add a more robust curriculum, but focused on resources and solutions for the neighbors that you're serving. So in the surveys, the Vincentian surveys, generally our volunteers, no matter what role they have as a leader or a caseworker or thrift store worker, feel that they're adequately trained for their role. What they don't feel is that they have adequate knowledge of resources and solutions. So we want to focus the training on what are the practical resources and solutions that are going to help you in your Vincentian work. Secondly, we want to create optional advanced caseworker certification. So I know in some conferences we have caseworkers that really dive into particular issues and become experts, subject matter experts. So there may be caseworkers in various conferences that want to develop this skill set. And so we want to develop a curriculum for advanced casework, really focused on the really difficult and challenging cases of unsheltered immigrant needs. Denise Fisher, who chairs our National Homelessness Prevention Committee, and Javier Lurch, who's on her committee, are evaluating some programs and some curriculum that we could potentially use for this purpose, but provide greater skills for those more difficult cases.
Mike, excuse me, I think you have a question or a hand raised from Sarah P.
Okay, I can't see the chat. Amanda, could you?
It might be a mistake. Sarah, if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. I asked her to unmute, but
Okay.
not sure.
Yeah, we put any questions, comments in the chat, but we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions or give live comments at the end. And third is to develop a strong network of formators, trainers in each district to allow for frequent instruction. It's fine to have all this curriculum, but if it's only available, once a year in Chamblee or once a year in Gainesville, it's not very useful. So we want it to be available as on demand as we can make it available, and that will require a network of formators and trainers in each district. And if any of you, would love to be part of that, if you have I know we have some Vincentians that are former teachers. I know we have Vincentians that are former corporate trainers. If you have those skills, you reach out to Gina or Lisa and let us know that that's something that you may be interested in. The second objective is to enhance resources and support for caseworkers and neighbor advocates. And I make that distinction because we all know what we mean when we talk about caseworkers. But we have lots of Vincentians that interact with neighbors in need, not in the context of casework, but in a food pantry or in a thrift store or at the parish office when somebody who's unsheltered walks into the parish. So we want to provide tools for caseworkers and other Vincentians who have contact with neighbors in need. So one of the things that's another carryover from the last plan is to establish a dedicated, council staff resource for that specialized casework support. I think on the last town hall, we called it the phone a friend function. You got a very difficult case and you need help. Who can you call to direct you to resources or help you with that particular neighbor in need? We do that a little bit now because Krista Fry has a lot of conferences contact Krista when they have difficult cases, but it's a very small portion of what she's able to do. So we want to have a more dedicated resource. And in addition to that, we want to create and maintain a statewide community resource database, which is easy to say and not so easy to do. It's a complex thing to create and perhaps more complex to maintain, but we're committed to doing that. We've begun that process using Trello to try to populate with some volunteers but we need to be more intentional about it and actually include some investment in it in terms of budgeting dollars for that. But I think it'll be a tremendous benefit to caseworkers and Vincentians across the state. And third, we hear a lot about, we understand that there's, things available at the council, but we don't know how to access them. We don't know how to get SNAP enrollment for our neighbor or get somebody prescriptions from the pharmacy. And so we want to create a more streamlined access either through our website or through some other portal to council-based resources. Because there's a lot available, our loan refinance program, which Vincentians say they never heard about. There's lots of things out there that we need to do a better job of communicating that they exist, how to access them, and make it an easy, relatively seamless process. The third objective is to recenter our work on our Vincentian charism and the essential elements. We see in the survey results, and I think it's skewed positively, but 25-30% of the respondents have never attended OSNAM orientation. I think it's a much higher percentage of that because I think the more engaged Vincentians were more likely to do the survey. But we really need to ensure that Vincentians receive that OSNAM orientation formation. And we might want to develop specialized orientations for other volunteers that maybe they only participate in the food pantry or the thrift store, and they don't necessarily need to know about conference operations. So we want to develop more customized orientations and make sure that everybody's grounded in what is the Vincentian mission, what is the Vincentian charism, why do we do what we do the way that we do it. And then the essential elements of spirituality, friendship, and service, we want to focus on each of those. So in spirituality, we want to develop the infrastructure and programs to provide some added spiritual growth opportunities. We've begun doing retreats. In fact, Deacon Bill is at Transfiguration, I think, this Saturday with 60 Vincentians doing a retreat. He's been doing a few others of those, but we'd like those not to be an exception, but to be something that's common for conferences to do on an annual basis if they so choose. So we want to develop that infrastructure for that, as well as some of our chaplaincy services, which you've probably heard me talk about in the past. We want to have more deacons engaged to support our Vincentians across the state, as Deacon Bill is doing here in Chamblee. And I want to create a chapel, but I'll skip that for now. I'm intent on building a chapel here at our main office. Third, we want to create and encourage opportunities for friendship and social interaction. So the second essential element is friendship. And in our planning committee, we talked a lot about the fact that the Vincentian work is difficult. Burnout's a real thing. Conference meetings sometimes get mired in the drudgery of cases and the cases that we can't handle because we're overwhelmed. We need to bring the joy and friendship back. We need to create and encourage opportunities to do that, to find ways to engage in friendship and social interactions, both within a conference, but also beyond just the conference at the district and at the council level. And then the third essential element, of course, is service, spirituality, friendship, and service. And we talk a lot about personal encounters. The home visit is the primary form of a personal encounter, but we have personal encounters in many ways. The rule talks about personal encounters, as John Barry likes to remind us, not specifically home visits. But we really need to sort of redefine what does that mean? What is the objective of a personal encounter in terms of providing a transformational relationship with the neighbor in need as opposed to a transactional interaction, and then use those objectives for sort of our home visit training, our advanced home visit training, and we call it home visit training, but it's really training for interactions with our neighbors in need, whether it's in the home or in a parish office or in a thrift store. And then lastly, is to cultivate a Vincentian staff. And historically, we have not considered and referred to employees as Vincentians. We've begun to do that to some extent. We've begun to focus here at the council on the Vincentian essential elements and the Vincentian virtues. But we really need to create a Vincentian culture. That involves improving onboarding of new staff to focus on the Vincentian mission and include a form of OSNAM orientation. Our colleagues in St. Petersburg spend 2 days onboarding every new staff member on the Vincentian mission, which may be a little overkill, but we probably spend 2 hours or an hour. So we need to invest more in onboarding our new staff. Secondly, we want to optimize the employee experience. We're committed to be the best nonprofit in Atlanta or in Georgia to work for. That means improving the employee experience, creating opportunities for professional development, which we've done on some individual one-off cases, but we want to really invest in our employees to improve their skill sets and improve their toolkits so that they can better support our Vincentians, our conferences, and our neighbors in need. We also want to enhance our employee support systems. We talk about casework burnout, which is a real thing. It happens at the employee level too. We've got employees that are dealing with really crisis situations for neighbors in need. Here at Chamblee, we see roughly 140, 150 people a day between our lobby daily offering and our family support center and food pantry. And it's a lot of stress on the employees. So we want to have support systems for our employees. We also want to have a system in place to help our employees who are struggling financially. We have lots of employees who are not earning a living wage, and whether they're at their thrift store or whether they're hourly employees elsewhere, and we need to be able to support those employees as well. And lastly, we want to create opportunities for staff members to engage in these personal encounters with neighbors. And we've begun this in a small way over the last year. We've done Super Bowl, serving soup to our unsheltered neighbors who come here into Chamblee. We did it with fish fry that we had for our neighbors in need here. All of the staff were engaged in serving those neighbors and then sitting with them and enjoying a meal. A very meaningful opportunity. We want to create more of those opportunities. So that's the second pillar, we'll do the same thing, pause and ask you to give us your feedback.
And Mike, there were a few notes in the chat that we just needed to clarify that one is strongly disagree, and then you're moving up to strongly agree. So some folks were confused by that. So just to clarify.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Okay, looks like everybody might be done. Go ahead and end it. Got 42% at agree and 58% at strongly agree.
Okay, great. And again, whether you agree or disagree, if you have thoughts or comments, you can drop them in the chat or share them at the end of the meeting. Okay, so those are the two, as Lisa pointed out, we have sort of two internal pillars, conferences and intentions, and two external pillars. And we'll shift now and talk about supporting our neighbors in need. And the strategy there is to foster transformational change through personal encounters and aid that lays the groundwork for self-sufficiency. We can't ensure self-sufficiency on behalf of our neighbors, but we need to provide them the opportunity to achieve self-sufficiency and give them, as Lisa likes to point out, the agency to help improve their situation. So the strategic objectives there, we have 4 of them. First is to emphasize personal encounters. So we've talked a lot about this, I think on previous town halls and certainly with our district presidents. We really want to create and encourage opportunities for neighbors to be personally engaged. Ideally in a home visit, we recognize that that's not always practical or possible. Interestingly, in the surveys, the survey of Vincentians, 60% of Vincentians responded that they meet with neighbors in need in home visits. But in the surveys of neighbors in need, only 24% of them said they were visited in their home. So I think there's some disconnect, and it could be skewed because of who's doing the surveys. But we certainly want to encourage home visits, but if not home visits, a home visit in the context of a parish office or a coffee shop or wherever we happen to be meeting a neighbor in need, because we do want the encounter to be a transformational and not a transactional encounter. And it's hard to get beyond the transaction if it's a telephone interview or a Zoom call. Secondly, we want to expand chaplaincy and retreat programs for our neighbors. Our neighbors are going through some form of crisis, some more serious than others, but it often includes some form of emotional and spiritual crisis in addition to a family crisis, a financial crisis. And we've been really pleased with the opportunity to have Deacon Bill and Deacon James here 2 days a week, interacting with our neighbors in need here in our Chamblee Support Center. And it's a wonderful benefit to those neighbors. So we'd love to expand that, again, get more deacons involved throughout Georgia, helping us to minister to our neighbors in need. We're also exploring a retreat program for our neighbors in need. Deacon Bill has been conducting retreats for homeless people from the Gateway Shelter and the Mary Hall Freedom House for years now at Ignatius House through the Ignatian Spirituality Project. And Lisa and I have been engaged with ISP to see how we could take that retreat program and make it available to conferences, make it available here at Chamblee so that we can get more of our neighbors in need engaged in a day or an hour or a few hours of sort of self-reflection and grounding themselves in their spiritual formation and sort of reconnecting with their God or their faith, whatever that faith may be. So we're really excited about that opportunity. Secondly, we want to expand holistic resources to foster systemic change, going beyond the transaction to transformational. So we want to, and we've done some of this historically in the past, years ago, but we want to develop skills-based workshops that we can offer. We've invested, as you know, in the capital campaign in an education center here with connected classrooms. We want to start to use those more robustly, offering these skills-based workshops on things like financial literacy, tenancy rights, English as a second language, other things that we can either do directly or bring in partners to do to empower our neighbors, and we want to make those available statewide through our technology. But in addition to those sort of very specific skills-based workshops, we want to also invest in and partner with programs sort of longer term and cohort-based to increase incomes of neighbors in need and improve opportunities for self-sufficiency. So we've begun piloting with, I think, 7 conferences, a workforce development effort in conjunction with SIA. That's a pilot that we can expand with other employers through other conferences if it's successful. We also are exploring the opportunity to implement the Getting Ahead program, which is used by St. Vincent de Paul in various councils around the country. St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia used to do a program, some of you may be familiar, years ago, called Journeys, which was sort of a life skills support program with a cohort that goes through a several-week program. It was discontinued for whatever reason some time ago. But those sorts of programs that can improve the opportunities for neighbors in need to become self-sufficient, develop skills, confidence, increased income to achieve that self-sufficiency. And thirdly, on the holistic resources, we want to look beyond the financial well-being of the neighbors we serve to focus on health and wellness. Of course, health is the third of our 3 pillars: hunger, housing, and healthcare. And we're focused on things like medication therapy management that we're starting to roll out now with Dr. Sam and the pharmacy team, which is a program geared towards addressing the root causes of someone's need for a particular medication and working with them to get them off that medication. We're looking at nutrition education and nutritional instruction, looking at things like possible health screenings, potential health clinics, things that we can do to bring health services to our neighbors in need. The third pillar, objective within this pillar, which is meaty, is to expand targeted housing programs, targeted being the operative word there, and develop services for unsheltered, not necessarily housing services, but other services. So we talked about in a list of our sort of core beliefs that directed our effort that eviction prevention should continue to be the main focus of our direct aid efforts. So in order for us to expand our eviction prevention and provide more funding to conferences to be able to help people with higher rental arrears and bigger utility bills and other things that are causing them to be at risk of eviction, we need to generate more resources centrally. And it's easier to go out and raise money from funders for a program like Motel to Home, which we've been successful at raising money for, or the pharmacy, or a workforce development program. It's a little more challenging to go out and raise money for just direct financial assistance. But the reality is that direct financial assistance to keep people in their homes is far more efficient solution than waiting until they've been evicted and then spending 2.5 times as much to try to rehouse them. And I think as we communicate more to donors that value proposition, we believe that there's funding available for us to get to conferences for direct financial aid. And this is also a focus of St. Vincent de Paul USA. They've engaged in a program with organization called AmFil, sort of thought leadership to focus attention on our role as probably the largest organization in the country preventing evictions and preventing homelessness to generate more funding. Secondly, we want to strengthen our existing programs, Motel to Home, landlord engagement, advocacy program, HANDS, which is housing and savings, which have been, Motel to Home has been very successful. LEAP and HANDS have been growing over the last 6 months or so here in Metro Atlanta. We want to expand those across Georgia. They are technically available, but we want to be more intentional about fundraising for those programs to bring them to all of the conferences across the state. And we want to utilize the experience and expertise that we have in developing the Motel to Home program to develop targeted rapid rehousing programming. And it's targeted because we've made the strategic decision that the appropriate place for us to focus on housing is on those people that are housing unstable, they're at the risk of eviction, or they are episodically homeless. You know, they've been housing, they've got the ability to maintain housing, but for because of some circumstances, they've become unhoused. And that's really our strength, is getting those people either stable, avoiding eviction, or getting them back into rehousing, like in the case of Motel to Home, as opposed to focusing on chronically homeless people that need longer term interventions, people that need permanent supportive housing and other sorts of transitional programs, which isn't our expertise and isn't our strength. And there are other great organizations doing that. So here we're talking about targeted programming for the population that we primarily serve through our conference network. Having said that,
Mike, can I interrupt you? There was a question in the chat asking for a definition of LEAP and HANDS, what those programs are.
oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, LEAP is landlord engagement advocacy program. So we're building a portfolio of landlords that will work with our Motel to Home families, but also we're expanding it now to conferences. So that if you have somebody who's having a hard time finding a landlord that will accept them as a tenant because of bad credit or some other circumstance, we want to have a inventory of landlords that will work with our neighbors in need, knowing that they're working with us. HANDS is a program we started with United Way this year. It's housing and savings. It's a savings match program. It started with our Motel to Home families. We've been selective about families that can participate in it because they have to be stable enough that they can save some money. And if they save anywhere from $25 to $150 a month, we will match that for the first 6 months. And if they maintain that for another 6 months, we'll give them a bonus so that at the end of a year, you know, they could have $3,000 in savings, probably for the first time in their lives. That's a program that started with a United Way initiative. So it's focused on Motel to Home and focused on Metro Atlanta. We are now expanding it to conferences with United Way's approval. And so you'll see more on that coming soon. So 3.3, again, we're not intending to get into housing for chronically homeless, either shelters or transitional or permanent supportive housing. However, those of you that have been to our Chamblee facility know that we get 80 to 100 unsheltered neighbors a day that come in to get food from our daily offering lobby pantry, to get water, protein bars, to use the restroom, to get potentially connected with SNAP benefits and other things. But there's not much more that we can do for them. But we are exploring and evaluating a day shelter, a day respite center, a service center for that population. And we could do that here in Chamblee. And we do that in Phoenix, we do that in Oregon, we do that in Dayton, we do that in other parts of the country. So we would provide services like showers, like laundry facilities, like more in-depth casework support to connect them to supportive housing services and try to get them housed through other partner organizations. We provide food, lunches. We provide a place for them to get out of the heat or the cold during the day. So that's something that we're evaluating. We haven't made a decision to do that, but as part of this plan, we've committed to invest in evaluation of doing that. And it wouldn't have to be just here in Chamblee. We could do that in Gainesville. We could do that in Dalton. We could do that in Macon. Well, we wouldn't do it in Macon because Macon already has a similar facility called Daybreak. But we'd love to be able to provide some additional services to that population. And fourthly, on this objective, we want to strengthen partnerships with the continuum of care throughout the state. There's 9 COCs. We're fairly well engaged with a couple of them. We need to develop relationships throughout the state with the continuums of care and other nonprofits. We're pretty well integrated in Metro Atlanta with the nonprofit community, but we're not throughout Georgia. Conferences may be independently working with other local nonprofits, but we don't have, as a council, relationships with United Way in Gainesville or in Valdosta or anywhere else outside of Metro Atlanta. So we want to make a more concerted effort to develop and strengthen those partnerships. And lastly, advocacy. We want to advocate on behalf of our neighbors. You've heard me talk about amplifying our voice and perspective. We have, as you all know, a very unique perspective because of the way we do the work that we do and the relationships that we build with the neighbors we serve and the trust that they have in us. And it gives us a unique perspective, and we need to share that perspective with the greater community. So we want to get more engaged in thought leadership campaigns. We started that with Denise, and B did a white paper on eviction prevention that was well received. We're going to be doing more of that. And we want to expand our Voice for the Poor committee. It has been kind of relatively dormant for a while, and we've got some motivated Vincentians that have picked that up and are carrying that torch. We want to get representation throughout conferences and districts across the state, and get more involved in advocacy. Secondly, we want to replicate something that our sister council in Cincinnati has. They have a retreat center at their main campus, but they also have a catalog of programming and workshops for community education, poverty simulations, housing 101, all these programs to educate our community, corporate partners, other nonprofits, other agencies, community leaders on the situations that we see in the work that we do. And we'd love to have a greater role in that communication. And lastly, we want to create, as our sister council in Phoenix has done so well, a culture of community service. We want to engage more community partners and corporations and engage them first, not as a funder, but engage them by providing them an opportunity to serve. Everyone's interested in an opportunity to serve in some way or another. And if we can engage them in an opportunity to serve, then we can engage them in our advocacy efforts. We can engage them in our funding efforts. And it's been remarkably successful in Phoenix, and we'd love to replicate that. So it's a lot to talk about. And you take a 1 minute break and let you give me some feedback on on that pillar on supporting our neighbors.
And again, just to chime in, this question is the same for every pillar. I don't know that I'm seeing what everyone else is seeing, so just in case it's hard to read on the poll, the question is the strategies in this pillar will move St. Vincent de Paul in the right direction over the next 5 years. So you're seeing it on the PowerPoint. That's the same question that we're asking for each set of pillar objectives.
All right.
All right, thanks, Amanda. So we've got a couple of neutrals and mostly agree and disagree. Again, if you're neutral and there's some things that you think would improve that, or things that you think we shouldn't do, please drop that in the chat, or add that in a few minutes when we get to the open discussion. And lastly, the fourth pillar is supporting our physical communities, filling gaps in our communities with presence and programs for underserved. And here we're talking about investing in our physical neighborhoods. Many of you know that we've got a facility. We have property in Lakewood Heights in South East Atlanta. Our board embarked 3 or 4 years ago on using that property to develop an affordable housing development called the Vincent. And we are committed to making that a reality, although it is challenging, but maintaining a presence in that community to support and continue to support that neighborhood. Secondly, we want to use this facility, which we are blessed to own as a result of our capital campaign, to expand our services to area residents here. You may know that we occupy half of this building, but over time we could expand into other parts of the building as leases expire, and expand our services. We can certainly expand our food programming here. We're capacity constrained with our space. There's not much more we can do in terms of food programming. We can expand workforce development programming in this space. We can expand our chaplaincy and counseling services. We can establish a day respite center that we talked about evaluating. So there's opportunities to make a greater impact on this community that we're invested in and have been invested in for 20 some years. And thirdly, we want to foster strong relationships around the state with cities and counties, that you should say, not countries. How many of us have proofread this and not seen that? Cities and counties throughout Georgia. So my view is that every mayor and every community that we operate in should know who St. Vincent de Paul is. Every county executive and county commission should know who St. Vincent de Paul is. And we need to do a better job at the council level of getting out throughout the state and meeting and integrating with cities and counties. Secondly, we want to expand our conference network. We already talked about growing our presence in the Diocese of Savannah. We're currently in 8 or 9% of the parishes in the diocese, whereas we're in about 75% in the Archdiocese of Atlanta. So there's lots of opportunities for us to establish new conferences. We've already begun that process, meeting with Bishop Parks and some of his staff. Secondly, we do want to increase our presence in the Archdiocese of Atlanta. We do have good penetration in parishes, but there's a lot of very rural parishes and a lot of inner city parishes, underserved areas that we aren't present, and we want to address that. And thirdly, we want to expand into youth communities, high schools, colleges, young professional groups. I'm pleased to report we're launching a conference at Pinecrest Academy in Cumming. We're reestablishing our conference at Blessed Trinity in Roswell. Brian Doolin is working on a conference at St. Pius High School. So we're starting to get some traction, but there's lots of opportunities to engage young people, both school-aged young adults who can become future adult Vincentians, as well as young professionals. And third, we want to address underserved communities. So we have, for example, 38 or so food pantries throughout Georgia, but we have lots of areas that we operate where we don't operate a food pantry, and some of those may be in food deserts. We've talked about getting grant funding for a mobile food pantry so that we can be out on a regular basis with a regular cadence in some of those rural, more remote areas that are food deserts. We could potentially do the same thing with health screenings, with health clinics at various parishes and areas that are health deserts. There are lots of counties in Georgia that have insufficient medical services. Workforce development, we could have a jobs training or jobs workforce development program that's mobile. We could go around to underserved areas and have a job center that on wheels that we're helping people engage in workforce development. Secondly, and this is really important and gets buried in everything else, but we want to work with conferences to identify service models that address their specific local needs. And years ago, St. Thomas the Apostle set up House of Dreams, which is a transitional housing facility for single women. There's no reason other conferences couldn't do something similar. We want to be there to support that. We're working with Christ our King and Savior in Greene County on their ambitious goal of building a mobile home development. A very exciting initiative that is conference driven, is not council driven. So any conferences that identify something that they want to do in their local communities and want help doing it, we're here to provide that subject matter expertise and assistance and financial assistance. And lastly, very opportunistically, we will consider investing in bricks and mortar housing. I say opportunistically, meaning like Lakewood Heights, we happen to be donated land that was suitable for an affordable housing development. Makes sense to do that. We were approached recently about a senior housing facility that's for sale in Decatur that could have been an interesting housing model for certain populations. It wasn't the right timing or the right specifics for us, but those sorts of things we need to be open to doing opportunistically as opportunities present themselves to us. And lastly, give us the same feedback. Do you think these strategies move us forward over the next 5 years? Strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Oh, you guys are fast this time.
They want to get off. It's 7:25. I don't blame you.
Okay. We're at 45% and 55%.
Good.
4s and 5s.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that feedback. Now, I know we only have 5 minutes left, but I have nowhere to go, so I'm happy to hang on longer for anybody who wants to discuss. But would like to get feedback. Either I think Brian's looking at the chat. If you've got questions or comments in the chat, or if you want to unmute and provide a comment on what you would like to see included that's not included, or something you feel is included and shouldn't be, or where you think the priority should be, I'll open it up.
Steve Conway has the suggestion of let's take the $100,000 twinning and put it toward hotel dwellers.
Or hotel dollars?
Maybe the motel to home program, hotel dwellers, current hotel dwellers.
Hotel dwellers. You mean, I assume, Steve, you mean to pay for hotels, pay for hotel stays?
Yes, I'm saying the twinning funds currently are to match, well, actually, if the conference gets low, to pay funds, towards, helping clients. I'm saying let's take those 100,000 funds and use them towards the people in hotels that really need to stay there. That's the ones that are marginalized, and that's the ones we're trying to help, and that's the ones we don't have enough money for day to day.
Yeah, okay, great. Good feedback, thank you.
Manny Sakara said the greatest priority in his mind is Vincentian support.
Thank you, Manny.
Rick wants us to reach out to Maris in addition to BT and Pius, so we'll be fair and reach out to Maris as well. They're close by.
We have a former Vincentian at Marist. Brian, who worked here for years, has their youth ministry or their campus ministry, I guess. Brian Friel.
This is correct. I'm fairly new as a Vincentian. I wasn't even aware of districts. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. What conference are you in, Rick?
St. Thomas Aquinas up in Alpharetta.
Okay. So you're in District 2, so we got 73 districts that are aggregated into 9 districts. I mean, 73 conferences that are aggregated into 9 districts. So St. Thomas Aquinas is in District 2, which is North Fulton. So there are 7 or 8 conferences that make up District 2. And we've got 9 of those districts throughout the state. And so
Thank
the district, the conference presidents, so Krista Toddy, in your case, attends the district meetings to represent your conference at the district. And the district presidents serve on the Archdiocesan Council Board.
Thank you.
And we have Ozanam orientation this week, not far from you up in Cumming. So if you haven't had a chance, all that structure is explained as part of Ozanam orientation.
And Jean remarks, consider having districts and advanced caseworkers manage Trello.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jean.
thank you. Lisa may want to comment on that. I mean, it's a it's a process that needs to be managed. Structure needs to be created, and we need some resource that can provide training to conferences that want to use Trello.
Yes, but just to follow up on that, that is part of our thinking in terms of utilizing the district structure to organize that effort. And, with some, council representative to kind of, manage the technical piece of it. It's, there's 2 things. There's the resource aggregation, and then there's the technical component where, we're hoping that conferences can pick up resources that we've already aggregated and then filter out from there. So it's just a process, but yes, we do think that, in incorporating the district structure to getting that done is going to be helpful. Very much needed.
Yeah, I see Manny had an important comment about, this is a lot. How do we prioritize it? So again, this is a 5-year plan. In the past, we've done 3-year plans. So this is more ambitious because it's a longer horizon. And the prioritization is going to come in the sort of annual process of budgeting, which is going to be based on the action plans that will be developed under each of these initiatives. So there's 4 levels to the plan. We've showed you 3 of them. Those are the 3 that are done. The next level is developing the action plans and tactics and SMART goals. And that's where we'll prioritize, what's to be done this year, what will be deferred to next year or beyond.
I have another naive question. Why isn't part of our funding come from our churches?
Well, it does indirectly. I mean, fortunate, and this isn't true everywhere in the country. Almost all of our parishes and pastors allow us to have a monthly second collection. So, because the pastor is allowing that collection to come to us, I mean, they are supporting our conferences. That's not true everywhere in the country. In fact, a lot of councils around the country, the parishes only provide 1 collection a quarter. And we, in most cases, have 1 a month.
I meant directly out of the charitable contributions.
You can take that up with your pastor, Rick, if you're armored well. We have some. I should say we do have some parishes that are wealthy enough that they have surplus and they do support conferences in some cases, but in most parishes they're struggling to get by and pay the bills, and many of them have capital campaigns. But yeah, you let me know how that goes.
Bruce, did you have a question? You had come off mute. I'm not sure if it was accident or not.
All right. Well, I thank everybody for joining us, and I appreciate the feedback. Again, this is still a draft, still time for you to give us input. Feel free to email me or Lisa with any comments you have. And we will finalize this over the next 30 days and get a final plan out to everybody. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for those who attended the town hall. And why don't we close with an Our Father together as we pray in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Amen.
Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.